Yeah. All right. All right. Thank you for everybody. My name is John Harris. I'm the co-chair of Climate Action Brookline, which is the oldest climate organization in the town of Brookline, Massachusetts. We've been around since the year 2000. And basically, welcome to everybody. This meeting is being recorded, as you were just told. So just be aware of that. If you don't want to have your image just on the screen, just leave it dark. Although we love to see everybody's faces. So our topic tonight is a update of the 2023 Climate Action Plan update. I think folks generally know that basically in 2017, Brookline signed on to the Paris Climate Agreement. And the first thing that Paris asked was that in 2018, that each signatory do a climate action plan, which Brookline did. It was led by Maria Morelli of the planning department, and Paris then she filed it to, still more folks coming in, Brookline then filed it with the Paris people, and then Paris further asked that every 5 years that each signatory do an update. And so lo and behold, 2023, 5 years after our last update of 2018. And here we are, and it is the beginning of the year, and we're just getting started with this project. Those who are in the know that Tom Barrasso has secured for us a $100,000 grant to do this project. He'll give us details on that. There's an awful lot else that's gone on, and so we are delighted to have Tom Barrasso, Brookline Sustainability Director, as our speaker today. Now, Tom has asked, he's going to give some introductory remarks, and he's asked just hold your questions and comments until that is done. And then, of course, an open conversation, and we welcome everybody's ideas and everybody's energy. And I do want to give one hint, which is that Tom has already mentioned the possibility of reinstituting some of the sustainability working teams that were operational around the year 2019, 2020, whatever. So here we go. Let's see. Yeah, no, I think that's it. Mr. Tom Barrasso, please. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks again for having me. So I want to start off tonight going through some slides that I prepared for the select board. So for a couple of folks, probably it's going to be a repeat, but I think they're critical to see where we were, kind of where we are, and kind of hopefully where we're going, which will be the sort of second half about the project that I'm going to be working on that's going to take up the considerable bulk of time, hopefully. So can I share my screen, John, without any...
You know what? Okay. I think I'm going to have to make you a co-host as well.
Maybe not. Hold on. There you go. All right. Let's see if that works.
Interesting. I see a blue screen. There we go.
There you go. All right. So we can go through this pretty quickly. I just wanted to sort of go over some of the things that we've already accomplished since I've been here. I think we're coming up on 2 years or so by the time we hit springtime, for this position being created and my being here. So we worked on a ground mount solar project in Sandwich, Massachusetts, where we are going to be the off taker of that, essentially those energy credits. So we're not taking any electricity, we're not getting any other credits for it, except for the energy credits that are on-bill credits that will go likely to the building department, since it's going to affect their electric bills. So we're going to be receiving about $1.2, $1.5 million over the next 20 years, so about $70K a year to help with that budget. I'm hoping that we can take that money as a savings and apply that to other energy efficiency or other climate related projects related to buildings. So it would be probably the accounts where the largest loads are going to be schools, maybe town hall or municipal service center, or the pool facilities. So some combination of those will get those energy credits. But by doing this, we actually supported the creation of a solar farm in Massachusetts that will be offsetting carbon, will be generating revenue for us, will be generating power for the host town that's there in Sandwich. So we're doing again, a good service to the overall solar industry by participating in this project. We actually beat out a couple of other towns for this ability to do this. I think Somerville may have been one of them, and also Cambridge. I'll give my negotiation skills a pat on the back for that. We did win some grant awards, small ones, $22,005 for the purchase of 2 EVs for the DPW, which they're in the process of purchasing now. Also for 1 dual port charging station, which will go somewhere in the town hall parking lot. An MAPC grant win for $5,000 to help with net zero planning, which I'm going to roll into the MVP grant that we won. That's $75,000 in cash, but then $25,000 worth of in-kind services, which is our department's participation. So yes, technically it's $100,000, but I'm going to roll that in to one of the work groups to help with that. That's an MVPC grant or MAPC grant. Sorry, they don't have. It's not a lot of money. It's only worth about $5,000 of their in-kind service and expertise. So key scope items for the MVP grant is, as John was indicating, an update to the Climate Action Plan of 2018. It's an update. It's not a rewrite, not a recasting. Essentially, what we've got there is the core of every type of climate action plan that you could see across the Commonwealth. So I want to take from that a way of getting action items out of it that we can actually implement, and then a roadmap that will get us from the short term to the midterm to the long term with our newly formulated goal. I think when this plan was written, we were still aiming at 2050, which will now be 2040. Also, it includes 1 tree planting project, which will be in an environmental justice neighborhood. That we have to figure out exactly where that's going to go. I have had some talks with Mothers Out Front about sort of, again, combining that with their concept of the specialized forest plan that they have. Whether we can pull that off or not, we're not sure yet, but that'll be one of the things we need to discuss. Other part was getting the new BGE contract sort of signed off and off the ground. And I think if you look at current rates, we've done pretty well. And I think that's going to hold the course for a while. The energy analysts that I've talked to all said that things have come down, but that's not going to be reflected in the average ratepayer's bill for quite some time. So I think we're in good shape with the numbers that we did get. It is a 2-year contract. Normally we do a 5-year contract, but again, the way the market was running, the best we could do was sign a 2-year contract. So we'll go out again in another couple of years to negotiate that one more time. Part of the other thing I've been working on is really trying to get relationships off the ground, internal and external. So great that I get to come here and talk to you. We've got a great rapport with John. And so trying to build the relationships at the state level that weren't necessarily broken, but were definitely not being nurtured or not being paid attention enough to, especially with respect to green communities. So trying to build regional coalitions with Newton, Arlington, Cambridge, different ideas about electric vehicle charging, rolling those out in the sort of public sector. Other things that we're talking about where we could definitely gain some mutual benefit. Obviously, rapport with Representative Patolo and all the things that we need to accomplish at the state level. And also, we've had a new changeover. We've got all kinds of new personnel at the municipal level, including a new town manager or town administrator. So we've had to develop rapports there, which are all going very, very well. So kudos to him on his rollout of this ARPA proposal, which I think included every single idea that we shot upstairs between Kara Bruton and I. So I think that's off to a good start. So some of the outputs that we got out of this relationship building was we formed a coalition internally about EVs. And so I think we're much more focused now with an EV internal group, which includes DPW and myself and buildings. So with that, we've entered into an EV study. Again, small, we only had about $20,000 to spend. Part of that ARPA proposal included expanding that study. So I hope to get, again, a more concrete roadmap of exactly where we need to go, building policies internally for buying the vehicles, and more importantly, getting the infrastructure. So we analyze what we've got what we have for infrastructure already in terms of utilities, and then being able to map out exactly where these things can go in the short term and hopefully in the long-term planning. Energy coach proposal. Thank you, Susan and John, for all your work on that. We got that off the ground, and that is in the ARPA proposal from the administrator. And the geothermal project at Driscoll, which I think has been put back in, and hopefully that will go off without a hitch. So at the state level, the state's definitely changing the way they do green communities. They're going to move out into a green community 2, which is definitely going to be less energy efficiency focused and more about the transition away from fossil fuels, which is exactly where I see our MVP update going as well. We've got a new advisory board, the Zero Emissions Advisory Board, and that again is it's a little smaller, a little bit more nimble. I think Warner's here, so I think he can attest to that. And again, mentioning the new town administrator and working with his group. So I've tried to get like a division of labor for sort of the things that I'm working on. And definitely the planning end of things, the projects off the ground, the project focus is really kind of where my desk is. And the policy side of things, although I play a role in that, is really coming out of ZAB and the warrant articles that they produce, the warrant articles that you guys are working on or suggest for ideas. So that's kind of where I see the sort of the sustainability division kind of morphing into being able to take those things and develop them into ideas that we can actually implement. I've got a bunch of active projects going on, probably way too many. I've started a lot of fires and it's only me. So it's going to be an interesting sort of balancing act to get all these things done. So the climate action update, the BG renewal rollout, the EV electrification study, net zero, EV station installation at town hall, DOER compliance for our 20% under our green community goals. I'm on the emergency management team, which is integral in taking our hazard mitigation plan and integrating it with our climate action plan, which if we don't do that, we're not eligible for some funding mechanisms. And so that is a critical component. So as well as fire and police and other departments, I am on that team as well. I'm also the lead for the 10 community fossil-free pilot, which DOER has just rolled out. And I need to figure out how we're going to put that together and get that to the select board for some decisions. And also property assisted clean energy PACE. So I think we can adopt that without too much trouble. We've had some initial meetings between finance, myself, and Kara Bruton. So hopefully that will also go off without a hitch. So moving forward, the cornerstone of everything we need to do is get better integrated into all the processes, which I think we will do by the time we come out of the update for the climate action plan. So everything to do with the budget process, the CIP, managing all the assets in town, which I'm not in control of any assets from my desk. So I definitely have to work with buildings and facilities really closely to make sure that these things are being integrated into our thought process. We really need to figure out a way to get some additional contractor support. There's a concept called emission support, which I come out of the Washington, D.C. consulting community. So that is critical for pretty much anybody you can name in D.C. from FAA, EPA, DOD, DOE. Everybody has mission support contractors that they utilize for their core central mission. And that's something I introduced to the city of Boston as well as the city of Amesbury, and it went off really, really well. And so that allows me to sort of go out with concepts and ideas and get them translated either into studies or expertise that we may not have in-house, that we can put some boots on the ground to get those things done. So I've got some minor funding for that, but at least it's off to a start. Getting realistic plans into practice, which I think is going to be an outpouring of what we're going to do under the climate action update. And then trying to get the support across the different community elements, which again, the conduit to Climate Action Brookline, to Zero Emissions Advisory Board, and Mothers Out Front are very critical to making sure that that happens. So with that, let's talk about, we can stop sharing the screen. Okay, so, and I haven't sort of rolled this out to anybody except for Kara yet, but the grant that we received from MVP has a lot of mechanisms in there that you need to follow. So we've structured the scope of work. We put out an RFP. We had 2 responses to the RFP. We've selected a consultant, which is Weston and Sampson. I have a long-standing relationship with Weston and Sampson. They're also doing some of this mission support work for me now for Brookline. So I think we're off to a good start with people who already understand kind of the direction that the community is going in. So I've sketched out a pipeline, and I really don't have it to show you since it's just a sketch. But in what alluding to what John said about reactivating or retooling sort of the working groups. So I'm envisioning this as high-end elements, which include, for the initial sort of thought process, are transportation, building electrification, outreach, policy, energy generation and storage, resiliency, and environmental justice. And those may change over time, but those are the core ones that I think we need to look at. I'm going to take that as sort of the higher level thought process and then start passing them through some filters. So to get the actual work groups. So there is a defined scope of work that we have with the consultant with our RFP. So that we have to follow. That's what we told MVP that we were going to do. So the core of that is public involvement. So none of this happens in a vacuum. So from the themes that I just laid out, I want to turn that into some subgroup topics. Then from that, I want to compare that to the scope of work and actually come up with what the work groups or work teams will be. But that doesn't preclude other teams from being sort of started or generated from this process. So as we move through that, there's a decision tree. If it's core to the MVP grant that we have and the scope of work, that's an element that we're going to work on immediately with the climate action plan update. If it's a long-term element, such as policy, that will cascade further out, and we will work on that, but we will also continue working on that as we move through this process and deliver whatever deliverables that we have. The final output from this is I'm going to try to translate sort of climate action and climate action planning into an action item. So I want the end result of this to be long-term transformative team, so a transition team, which I think we've been missing. So we need to take the concepts and the things that we're working on, or the ideas that we have, and actually get some concrete traction on them. And I haven't, again, you're the first people besides Kara to sort of hear this. So that team has got to be composed of key elements within the town, as well as some outside ones as well. But DPW, facilities, schools, my department. From that working team, if the administrator likes this approach, and the administrator is included in that transition team, we will have the roadmap in front of us, and it should be the responsibility of that transition team to start making these things happen, both in the short term, things that we can nail down that are low-hanging fruit that we know we're going to go after, whether it's rooftop solar, additional geothermal, other things that we want to do, and then more long-term goals that help us get to the 2040 master goal. So that's kind of my thought process for where we need to be. So with that, we can welcome some questions.
Tom, let me just say, I just see a chat from Karen Kraut. And so Karen, you're first on the list.
No, John, that was a direct message.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, then I see we have a model person right there with Patty. Please, everybody, for questions or comments, use the yellow hand. They will come up in the order that you click your own yellow hand, and that way it's objective. I guess I will only kind of ask folks to be brief if we tend to be kind of digging too deep on a single theme and leaving other themes untouched. But other than that, open questions and comments. So the first is Patty Correa, please.
Thank you. Hi, Tom. So just thank you for the description of kind of where your thinking is on the climate action plan. One question or thought is, some thinkers around this stuff inject EJ analysis and brainstorming into each of those categories. So into the category of buildings, into the category of transportation, just to make sure you're not siloing it. When it really has to be thought through in each of those categories. So I just wanted to throw that out. And right now we're at this critical moment where IRA money is going to be coming down through the states to consumers with particular focus on low and moderate income people who are going to be eligible for really, very good rebates, just outright point of sale rebates. And so I'm wondering if there's any thinking yet about the town's focus kind of piggybacking on all these new resources for renters and owners and of all different income levels that's going to be coming to us through Massachusetts later this year.
Sure, that's a tall order because again, we've got direct control over a small amount of resources. And being able to push that message out is part of the critical component of the outreach. And that's part of what we asked for in the MVP grant was like, we need a way to do this. So part of that planning in this update process will be looking at the outreach and how to better design things that will get the message out to the public. A couple of things that are kicking around. I know Kathleen Scanlon is working on some guidance documents for homeowners. So we're reviewing those together. They're not an element that's being produced by the town, but being produced by essentially a subcommittee of ZAB. And I think she's got other members that may be in this room. And hopefully those will roll out relatively shortly. That'll show people the way. I've been talking with folks at the renter level who are definitely they're not lost. They know the direction they want to go in. The biggest question is financing. So I think if the financing is there and it is coming from the federal government, and there are ways that we can show them how to apply for that or how to receive that money, I think that's going to be the kicker. Reaching the other strata of condo associations, large scale commercial apartment buildings, been sort of thinking about how to do that and been trying to develop a list of those entities that we can begin the reach out process to, and hopefully find a couple of key entities that would like to do this for real and hopefully provide them with some expertise through either energy coaching, hopefully if we get that off the ground as well through the ARPA funding and then the funding mechanisms that we've got coming through the state and the federal government.
Yellow hands, questions or comments? I'm sure there are tons of them. Okay, I'll tell you what, let me go next then, which is just the issue of the sustainability working teams, reviving or beginning anew. On the one hand, there are all kinds of folks working on their projects, and in the context of the three major priorities in terms of greenhouse gases, which, as you said, Tom, the top two are buildings, construction and operation, and transportation. Number three is electricity generation. And it just seems to me that, well, electricity generation, that's the BGE project, which revives itself periodically as contract. But it just seems to me that building focused and transportation focused should be the top priority to get those started quickest. Number one.
Yes. And I think the town administrator's proposal on ARPA had quite a number of things in there that were leading in that direction. One of them that really intrigued me was the full electrification of the health building. And just from a model perspective, if we can tackle that and pull that off relatively swiftly, I think that will be a great sort of beacon for figuring out how to do that. Some of the concepts that we're rolling around too on the municipal building asset side of things is maybe how to put that complex into some form of campus environment. So we're not dealing with everything individually. And I think we need to look at that even from a global perspective. I'm having a meeting with Heat, trying to revive National Grid's interest in Brookline for doing some form of microgrid, geothermal microgrid. So that those concepts have to be sort of integrated as well. Part of the message I wanted to deliver tonight is some of the things that we're looking at, and you bring up the energy generation, is aesthetics in town and how we may need to kind of stretch those a bit to live with the things that we have to do in the short and medium term. So when we get to 2040, the technology is probably going to change drastically, and we'll be able to do other things that we couldn't do now, or the things that we're doing now may be smaller than they are. So for example, solar. If we could find someplace in town to locate a solar facility and generate some electricity with that, that would be a phenomenal idea to get off the ground. But I think the biggest leap there is going to be the aesthetic value. And any solar contract is going to run for 20, 25 years. So you live with it for that period of time. And then again, the technology is going to change drastically by the time we come out of that. And we reconnoiter again and change things around. But I think there's some fundamental elements that we're just going to have to sort of, bite the bullet on and go, okay, we're going to pursue this, knowing full well that when we come out the other side, we'll be in a better position, but the technology will also be changing.
Yellow hand, Rebecca Arnoldi, please.
Yeah, hi. So it sounds like you're doing a lot of great stuff and you have a long list, so that's wonderful. I just wanted to respond to one thing you just said, and also had a couple other ideas I just wanted to put out there into the world. So in terms of a place to have solar, I'm just thinking rooftops, public buildings I'm hoping that might be some possibility, because that way it wouldn't take up green space. You wouldn't have to cut down trees. So that's just a thought in my mind. And although you have such a long list, I'm sure you're not looking to add anything on right now. I just wanted to bring up a couple of ideas for possibly the future. One is just helping create more protection for private trees and green space in terms of development. There's a lot going on with that. And I know we've got a great new warrant article passed that helps protect trees. And I just want to say we need to extend out in terms of tree roots and abutters trees. And I think that's really crucial, and also green space. So in terms of, carbon cutting and carbon sequestering, I think that would be key. And another idea I just want to throw out into the world for, when you've got some of this under control, maybe, is, we're trying to create more affordable housing, and we're trying to cut carbon emissions, and we also need habitat and biodiversity just in terms of humans, let alone every other creature. So having two family units, owners of two families, be able to create space for more people. The more people you have in a home, the less carbon you're using per person. So I just want to put that out as an idea, any way of allowing three families within existing dwelling without even needing to build more dwellings, without having to develop green space, just within the existing dwellings.
And again, I'm not a planner. I'm a geologist and a chemist, but I sit in the planning department. So I definitely hear you. And sitting in the planning department in any, whether it's City of Austin, Amesbury, whatever, you run into that economic development arm all the time. So it's like you're doing some things and then there's expansion. Same thing with schools. It's like chasing your tail. So everything you do on an energy efficiency side in most schools, ends up sort of being negated because there ends up being more students and so you get or bigger buildings and new stuff. And so that becomes problematic. Every kid's got a cell phone, everybody has a computer, and it's just an endless kind of cycle. So breaking that is a big ask and a big equation. So keep asking the questions. I don't think I can do that with the climate action plan update. Maria Morelli had an excellent presentation at the select board meeting on a corridor study for Harvard Street. So if you haven't seen that, I would go back and look at that because that was definitely some increased density along that corridor. And she definitely knows what she's doing in that respect. So those are definitely some interesting questions. We do have the urban forestry plan through Ms. Vecchio in DPW. And so I don't think we're planning on cutting down trees. We're actually, I think we're supposed to add 7,000 trees, I think is part of the plan, which is an enormous number. Part of the action plan update would be for, some tree planting in an EJ neighborhood, which again was part of what we wanted to do for resiliency. But it brings up different questions about, where to put solar. And the rooftop solar question, I think has already been answered. If there's room up there, we can get it up there. That's definitely needs to be done. We're arguing at this point or discussing at this point the benefits of actually owning the arrays versus doing power purchase agreements. So I think that's kind of where we are in the spectrum, but no rooftop is off the table. It just becomes a question of being able to get the array into the appropriate location. And that brings up the aesthetics, which also includes battery storage, because we're also looking at demand response shaving. So how to be able to do that while you park a giant battery next to some facility or someplace in the downtown area becomes aesthetic questions. So those become the tricky things to sort of answer.
Tom, I'll tell you, Don, you're the next yellow hand, but Tom, if you could just tell folks who don't know, you talked about ownership versus something called a PPA. What is a PPA? Power
purchase agreement. So in that case, the solar model was originally developed where people were basically allowing a solar company to come in and do the development. So the risk, both from environmental risks, the risks on the dollars, were all borne by the entity that was actually doing the construction, and they get a benefit to that. So they build the thing, they actually make money off of it, and the host community or the host location gets a benefit as well. So they either get a land lease, they get a payment in lieu of taxes, or then they get the energy from the solar array as well, or the energy credits as we're getting in Sandwich, Mass. So there's a lot of different ways to sort of cut this, but in the recent times, the sort of rules have changed a bit. So it makes ownership of the thing more attractive for a municipality, which is good. But just between all of us, the place that municipalities usually fall down is maintenance. So we do a lot of things really well. Maintenance isn't one of them. And that's just any municipality across the board. It takes a lot of effort, it takes money, it takes time, it takes expertise, which sometimes you don't have. And so things tend to go by the wayside and not get repaired or not get well looked after. So in my mind, the sort of lease option for municipalities, whether it's fleet vehicles, solar arrays, still seems to be a good way to go, but we need to weigh that with the options of money, provided the money that we either save or generate goes back into climate action activities. If it sort of just goes into the general revenue, I think we're cutting something off there for not the long-term plan.
Thank you. Yellow hand, Don Weitzman, please.
Yep. Tom, thank you for all this. Let me put in a plug as we go ahead with the update of the climate plan, that there be some measurement involved, some way to assess how well we're doing as a community. In the early days of the Select Board's Climate Action Plan committee, we did a greenhouse gas inventory, and those numbers are still bandied around, and we never did an update of it. Partly because Alan Leviton was our main numbers guy, and he was not satisfied with the quality of the data that was out there. But I think we've got to get past that objection so that we have at least a rough idea of how we're doing. And I think that not only does it tell us how well we're doing as a community, it's also a motivational device that we can use to toot our own horn or declare that we're not moving fast enough or whatever. But so let me put that plug in there.
Understood. And actually, I just had a conversation with Commissioner Galantine this afternoon about that very subject. And sometimes the take I have on that is that we're aiming for zero emissions in a relatively short timeline. So knowing down to the fine detail, I think we can get the big picture without really digging super deep into the data. But for every building that we electrify, we're sort of hitting more and more of that zero. So I think that's the ultimate measurement is like how many things are we going to electrify in what period of time. So that I think is the one that we need.
Questions, comments, concerns from folks?
I got a quick comment from Lisa Cunningham. Yes, they do. And I think that's part of the mechanisms that we need to look at. If we're going to buy anything, we need to make sure that we have a maintenance agreement in there. And that's another good mechanism for the savings. So if we're actually generating money with an asset, whether it be an EV charging station or solar panels, that we make sure that that money gets allocated somewhere back into the process. So we shave off whatever we need to do the maintenance fees. And just as quick examples, that was the concept that I had for Amesbury. I worked for the city of Amesbury. I retrofitted all the street lights to LEDs. We were saving about $80,000 a year. I had in my plan set aside all the money that we needed for maintenance because we didn't do that in-house. I had a contract all set to go for that. And in the end, they messed it up. And then so that money was not fed back into the system. So the best laid plans need to make sure that that's happening from both the bottom and the top as well.
Yellow hands, seeking yellow hands. I see John Hermos has an actually human hand, which luckily I can see. John Hermos, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Tom, you just mentioned streetlights. One of my pet peeves in this town, I call it Brookline, the city of lights. What are you doing with regard to the transportation department and assessing lights, their needs, their upside, downside? You mentioned, but I didn't quite get the full.
Sure, I haven't done anything with streetlights for Brookline. As far as my understanding, they've already been converted to LEDs, and therefore that piece of the puzzle for energy efficiency is sort of done. If you're talking about light pollution analysis or retuning those LEDs, which they're capable of doing, that's something we could look at. It's definitely there's a lot of rules to street lighting, and the people who have command and control of that are usually police, fire, and DPW, because there's definite needs out there for what a street light is supposed to do, both for where they need to be placed, how many they have per distance on the street, and then what the spread is and what the lumens are in order to make sure that those things are covered.
Thank you, Tom. Just Mary, you're the next yellow hand. Let me mention that the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, Tom, has in fact been working on improving so-called street lighting to actually better light the sidewalks too, to make pedestrians and seniors, et cetera, have more likely to use to walk on the sidewalks after dark. So Mary, yellow hand, please. Just
real quickly, I don't know which models that you purchased or what sort of secondary attachments there, but those streetlights are usually very, very tunable to both the color, to the spread, and to other things that they can do. There's each, if you bought the right ones, each one of the streetlights should have, I think it's a 5-pin connector on the top, which can be used for a variety of different purposes, including cameras for police or atmospheric monitors for health. If we want to look at pollution in town, that was some of the things that I was considering for Amesbury as well. So there's a lot of opportunity there, including increased Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi networks can also be piggyback on those lamps. Mary?
Interesting. Mary Dort, yellow hand, please.
Thank you so much, Tom. I'm curious, maybe I've missed something about the existing climate action plan, but I'm wondering what your strategy is for really getting a productive result from this new climate action plan and how we can help. You've talked about working teams. There's a lot of knowledge I just see on this call about various aspects of Brookline and how we've been working on it for years. Can you just give us an update on what that consultant, you'll be asking that consultant to do and what the product will be? Or maybe you've done that and I missed it. I don't know.
No, that's okay. We can go back over. Let me actually go through the scope if I have all my notes here. So some of the key elements from the scope are report designing, public involvement, community engagement, baseline data collection, which would be the original climate action plan. So review and analysis of that. Action ID for prioritization. So again, when we come out of this, we had like a lot of high order items in the last one. So there's a pretty comprehensive list in there of things that wanted to get accomplished, but we need to be able to drill down into those now and get some, again, more prioritized action items. And again, as John indicated, the key elements are likely going to revolve around transportation and buildings, because those are probably the two biggest contributors. So those are the two things I see some real action projects coming out of. And sort of coming back around and doing the working groups, I think are going to be able to get the input that you guys want to give into the actual plan. And again, consider it an update, not a complete rewrite of the plan. So we're not scuttling anything that we did in the past. We're coming out of this with a more focused, probably end list of what you guys had in the original 2018 plan, more of a focused list of activities to do. So the deliverable will be a final plan development, and then that will be the integrated update to the plan, which fulfills John Harris's obligations to Paris. And then again, we'll build into that, revisiting this again, so that we can actually plan for the future. Maybe we don't need to worry about getting a grant, or we get a grant. We also have some internal funding that we can put together at this too, by the time we reach the next sort of 5-year update mark. And then the other output will be the actual planting of trees. So there's a physicality to what we want to accomplish with this grant as well. That's a small portion of what we're doing, but it's still an action item that MVP supported.
What is the timeline for the consultants again?
We're a little bit behind the 8 ball already, so the RFP process took a lot longer than I anticipated. So we got all the ink on the contracts. We've got our first meetings with the consultant and MVP coming up, as well as MAPC, and I need to meet with them and start sort of getting this sort of concept of the working group flow into what they're conceiving for what they want to do with the project, and then go from there. So it's going to be pretty compressed and moving pretty quickly. So I think by springtime, summer, we should have some idea about precisely what work groups that we want to form, and then we'll start to roll out some analysis of what the plan actually is, and then get together with how we're going to get the community outreach, which likely at this point may be some sort of a hybrid situation where it's either partially Zoom, partially in person, or all Zoom, depending on again, what everybody's appetite is and what the rules are going to be when we change this around from constant online meetings to hybrid meetings.
Patty Correa, yellow hand.
Hi, a little follow-up question. I'm sorry if I missed it, Tom. What is ZAB's role in the development of the climate action plan?
They're part of the group as everybody else. So I don't think there's any priority there. They're like CAB, like Mothers Out Front, like the rest of the community. They're part of that community. The where they come in, I think, in the sort of long-term feature is going to be on that policy development. So I think they've been a key player in developing those policies, although all of you folks can develop warrant articles on your own as well. But I think that's the teeing up of those policies that we just saw in the last group that they did of warrant articles. I think will be a continual flow that we'll see. So there'll be things that we probably come up with, whether it's related to EV infrastructure or more EV purchasing. Do we actually need some hardcore policies in place that need to either be integrated or tweaked? I could see that as being a part of their role too. And Les Werner, do you want to comment on that?
You're muted, Warner. Oh, nothing. Okay.
Yeah, as I say, I've been listening and waiting for this to develop as well, so I don't have anything to add.
Thank you. The next yellow hand is myself, and it picks up on David Lowe. Hit the yellow hand so I don't forget you. Okay. It picks up on Mary's question, which is first of all, the previous generation of sustainability working teams were a mixture of experts in that topic, which was very helpful to the staff, but they were also, there was a good component of enthusiasts about that topic. And that was a good structure, because it meant that when any of those working teams did something like proposed a warrant article, there was a built-in, very strong advocacy group, and it led to very good success at town meeting. So that's something for everybody to understand. It would be great if the working teams were essentially open admission, and if folks deferred to the experts, but also both resident and volunteer experts and town experts, but also provided ideas and enthusiasm. And second, Tom, just a question of your conception of the possibility of resident initiated working teams. I'm going to give you an example of one in just one sec. And in terms of who would be coordinating meetings of these working teams, I do know that in the initial round of working teams 2-3 years ago, there were so many working teams that it was overwhelming for the town employee who was coordinating them. And so, Tom, just advice, you might want to be the coordinator of the top priority working teams in terms of greenhouse gases, but you might want to defer to that or delegate whatever that to, citizen advocates to lead other topics. And then finally, as Tom knows, and some of us know, that a number of us micromobility enthusiasts we would love to revive a micromobility subcommittee of a transportation working team. I've got a core group of about a half a dozen people already who say they want to be part of that. And Tom, would you like to coordinate that group? It is transportation, so it's one of the top priorities.
Yes, and that was in my initial other sketch of sort of the subgroup. So again, you're correct. That's my vision of this thing, is like there's going to be a core group that we definitely we can manage. And if it gets to be too enormous, we're not going to be able to manage that. However, the importance of those groups are something that we need to cascade through the whole process. So the core ones are going to end up contributing probably the most to the project at hand, because the project at hand has a timeline and it has a budget. So we need to adhere to that. But as we come out of that, we're still going to need these concepts to be discussed, entertained, and turned into warrant articles, policies, budget items. So those will continue to cascade. And yeah, I'm going to need everybody's help on that. So whether it's coordinated through the specific entities that already exist, whether that be Climate Action Brookline, definitely ZAB, definitely Mothers Out Front, or other entities that form maybe as a result of this process. As long as everybody kind of understands, there's a mission and there's a deliverable. Part of what I want to get out of this is not so much sort of lofty kind of ideas or other concepts, but I want a deliverable out of each working team. So what that looks like yet, I'm not quite sure, but what I hope to do is actually formulate a template for that deliverable so that we can actually say, okay, this is the thing. And when you come out of your deliberations, your discussions, the things, this is what I need to have. And that, of course, will be a core for the ones that we will manage under the project, but it also could now be the translation step for all the other teams that are out there contemplating these ideas. So it's not just a letter that says, hey, you know, here's some ideas that we have. No, I want it to be more specific and more hardcore than that. So we can actually then take that and compare and prioritize the items that we think are going to work the best. And again, that short-term window, medium-term window, and long-term window. Does that make sense?
Yes, and then a very specific question, this micromobility subcommittee of transportation team, do you want to coordinate that now, or we got this little group, about half a dozen folks, we got energy, we're kind of ready to at least begin talking amongst ourselves. Are you okay with that?
I am, and I see Perry's here, and we've already had a conversation about that.
Exactly. Okay, very good. Next, Joel Hand, David Lowe.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I came late. I got waylaid and sort of lost. I came down with COVID after 3 years of dodging it. I finally got it. It's mild. And then my wife caught it. So I was out getting her meds and forgot about the meeting. So I'm sorry I missed some. This isn't quite policy. And thank you, Tom, for being here and for all your work. It sounds like great progress on many fronts. There's been a dialogue in the town meeting listserv the past few days about heat pumps and whether they failed or worked during the one-day cold snap. And there are, as you can imagine, many opinions, and of course, many different technologies deployed in many different houses of various degrees of leakiness or size. And so something I thought about a long time ago, and I think it might be timely, is I wonder if there is some capacity, if not by the town, by groups collectively, of finding some technical expertise to guide people through the process. I've looked into a whole house heat pump myself, and I got 2 different bids from 2 different companies or different equipment, several bids from 2 different companies. And I was swimming in the details. I had no idea which one made more sense. It was comparing oranges to dolphins. So guidance would be useful, especially when people are starting to pay attention and take note. There is somebody outside of Brookline, Steve Bright, who provides such a guidance. I don't know what his capacity is, but it seems like a useful idea. So I just wanted to float that and see if there is grounds for traction.
Sure. If you know him, put him in touch with me. My email's on the website for sustainability department on the Brookline website. But
okay,
a couple of things that you may have missed. We're working on guidance documents, which again are probably going to be 2 pages, so nothing deep and elaborate, with Kathleen Scanlon of ZAB.
good.
Those hopefully will get rolled out as well. We're also working on the energy coach. Hopefully that will happen through the ARPA proposal that was put forth by the town administrator. Hopefully that will be funded, and that will help again homeowners do that. And I will unveil one other thing, which I probably shouldn't, because I'll probably get in trouble for this, but this is a high concept idea, just sort of in the sort of thought process, although I reached out to some people already, and I'd like to make this happen. And again, it may be just wishful thinking, but I'll throw it out to you guys. So I'm trying to conceive a trade show. So and this came sort of out of some discussions about having another climate action summit, which I think we need more of the hands-on, like, this is the thing that you can get, and this is the way to do it. And I think that says to me trade show.
I like that.
if we can figure out how to do that, I have some contacts in International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers in town, and I've reached out to them. They agreed to talk with me, but they don't know what I'm aiming at yet. So I don't think it may not even be one municipality that does this. So part of the other thing may be to reach out in that relationship building slide I had earlier, Newton, Lexington, Cambridge. Maybe we do some sort of combined thing where, you know, we've got IBEW, maybe Mass Clean Energy Center, maybe another trade facility, and it's paid for by them. So the municipalities will be the guests sort of showing up at this, and that is open to everybody. So go there and see some of the cutting edge stuff and the things that are available now that you can employ and meet people. Because again, as the municipality, we can't say, oh, you should use Fred's heat pump service. That's we can't do that. But if we bring a whole bunch of them together in one room and you guys pick whoever you want, then that's, you know, something.
It's a great idea, and we've done something like this with Jewish Climate Action Network. The challenge is a little bit the vetting. You don't want to, you can't endorse anyone, but you also don't want vendors coming in who are going to pull the wool over people's eyes and sell them substandard equipment. So
Right.
I don't know to what extent you can vet for.
Well, that's again involving the trade unions, I think is critical, because I think they're especially IBEW, they're on the cutting edge of where some of this stuff is, especially at the maybe at the higher level too, but they're getting into the weeds at the sort of homeowner and rental levels too.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I'll tell you, Karen, you're the next yellow hand, but I do want to give credit where credit is due. In terms of the how-to guides, the group that is working on that, in addition to Kathleen Scanlon, it includes several attendees in this group today.
Yeah, John, I'm going to actually speak right about exactly to that. Were you going to say something more about that?
I was going to give three names, four names, which is yourself, Susan Martin, Diane Sokol, and Patty Correa. But Karen, go ahead if you want to.
I just wanted to make an announcement. It's not a direct question to Tom, but since it's almost time to be done and I have to go, Tom referenced the how-to guides that John is now talking about and giving credit to the folks that have been working on that. And I want to say that we're very far along with the guides, and the next phase that I want to announce is that we're going to be trying to have a campaign to get the word out about the guides and to kind of create like a fertile ground so that people are aware that they're coming and excited when they come and use them. I mean, that's the goal, is to get them into people's hands. And so, or not literally, it's going to be online, but still you get the idea. So the reason I'm making this announcement is because you guys are all here and have a huge interest in this issue, and you're all connected to lots of people and lots of channels that could help with that. So I just want to, I put my email in the chat. And I want to just announce that we would love to have, those of us working on the campaign side would love to have a meeting where anyone that has ideas for how to get the word out. We already have a lot of ideas. So if you say you're interested, I'll send you an email of the ideas we already have, and then we can have like a virtual meeting and then build off that, so we don't have to recreate the wheel. So please note my email address, KarenClimateAction@gmail.com, and let me know if you'd like to be part of that brainstorm and ultimately helping us get the word out. Thank you.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Any other comments, questions, concerns from anyone? Let me mention something that is also kind of in the air that folks might be interested in, which is first, well, two things. First, to put it in the context of the comprehensive planning process that the town just really began a couple of months ago, pursuant to a town meeting vote. And the whole idea on that is all of the many town plans, climate action plan, tree plan, housing production plan, et cetera, will all be kind of reconciled under this single master or comprehensive plan. It will do that. The other thing that the comprehensive planning process is intended to do is provide lots of opportunity for all concerned residents to weigh in with your priorities for your neighborhood or your favorite cause, et cetera, et cetera. So just want to be sure everybody is aware of that. And I do thank you, Karen. We'll see you later on. And I want to mention one other plan in town that is currently being updated, and that is the preservation guidelines for people who live in historic preservation districts. And I think there are 8 or so districts in town. It encompasses a surprisingly large amount of land area in town and many, probably in the hundreds of houses. So this is a process that was kind of about to begin just before COVID, and it's just now getting started again. They would like to complete it by the end of this year if they can. I can tell you, having attended an awful lot of Preservation Commission meetings, that group is super historically oriented, looking to the past to preserve the best of the older buildings in town. They are desperately in need of input from people who are kind of eco-oriented architects, eco-oriented landscape architects, with ideas of how to incorporate those ideas by keeping the beautiful buildings in town that we can. So I would like to encourage everybody with that kind of expertise to get involved in that. You can check their meetings on the town calendar, or you can also let me know of your interest, and I'll try to loop you into that whole process. So any other questions, comments, concerns from anyone?
Well, the other thing I'll say is that, of course, I'm like a one-armed paper hanger, trying to get all this stuff accomplished, but I would like to publicly thank Linda Hickey and our admin person in planning. She's been absolutely phenomenal, helping me out getting all this stuff. And of course, Kara Bruton, and the new administrator has got a pretty open policy, so I'm talking to him as much as I can.
Fantastic. John Bowman, yellow hand, and then Deborah Rivers.
Thank you. A question occurred to me about the local electrical grid. And I think there's concern that the local grid may not be big enough to support the ambitious goals for electrification of our building stock. Is that a legitimate concern? And if it is there some way that the climate action plan is going to be addressing that concern?
It's one of the things I definitely look at all the time, especially in the immediacy of EV infrastructure, and trying to understand precisely where we can locate those things. In most cases, believe it or not, you get kind of 2 responses. So when you talk to individuals offline, people are like, oh, not ready. It's like, not ready. We got to do more work to get it ready. It's like, okay. When you talk to them publicly, it's like, all set, let's ready to roll. So it's a mixed message. I'm not sure which is exactly true. It's probably some mix of the 2. But any of the planning that we do, that's the key element, is bringing the utilities to the table and say, hey, this is what we have planned. Are you ready to help us with this? So a couple of things that have gone a little bit astray in my short tenure here in Brookline is definitely looking at some of the charging station infrastructure that was needed and the precise places that we wanted it. It couldn't be done for a variety of different reasons, whether it be, oh, we don't have the power there yet, or there's so much overlap with other rights of way that it became tricky to locate there as well. So it definitely takes some planning to do any of the things that we're trying to do, whether it's a total building electrification or just rolling out simple electrification of transportation for EV charging stations. So it's a concern, and it's a question that we're constantly asking. I'm in a meeting with the utility companies every 2 weeks with DPW and facility folks.
Deborah Rivers, yellow hand, please.
Well, actually, this whole thing of the grid was what I was going to bring up in the energy generation. And I think this electrification of buildings and transportation has to be coordinated with the utilities. And I don't know how that happens, but if it doesn't, you're not going to, I think the grid in Brookline is very fragile. I mean, we lose power, just because it's old, often enough to be worrisome. And so I think that third leg of that triangle has to be dealt with.
Yeah, and that was one of the first things I wanted to ask when we started to look at, deploying EV stations. It's like, well, where can we actually do these? And that part of the EV study that I'm looking at, although again, small amount of money to do it, is asking that question and trying to get together with the utility. So at the moment, this is all being done kind of piecemeal. And I think what the plan really needs is sort of a more robust we need to look at the entire map of Brookline and say here, here, and here, we're going to be hitting these areas in the near term. So get ready. And we need to be.
And my recollection is that the climate action plan, the 2018 climate action plan, has very little about building electrification. And so it's a whole piece that I think is going to need more development than updating.
Yeah, and again, we're relying on a lot of that because no matter what you do, the rooftop is not big enough in almost any building that we look at to power itself. There's just too many mechanicals. The building footprint is not big enough. Yeah, we can do canopy, but that's again, we may be limited in space. Like a lot of this overlaps with other infrastructure improvements. So if you look at, again, just the town hall campus, for example, if we try to do some canopy on the parking lot, should we really be doing that, or do we need to upgrade the parking lot? And then you've got the underground facility, and then you've got Pierce School. So there's a lot of moving pieces in this. And if we deploy something too quickly, then we're going to have to rip it up to do whatever other adjustments that we have to do. So there is definitely some long-term planning that needs to be looked at. And that is part of the strategy of looking at the CIP, the budget on a regular basis, and making sure that those things are in there and they reflect some of the things that we need to do with respect to climate action. So I was able to participate in the CIP this year and had a filter on there for the things that we needed to look at. That went upstairs into the ether. So hopefully everybody made, the correct decisions on that, but we'll see what happens when, final budgets come out and we get the things that we actually need, and hopefully we don't fall too short.
And Werner, 1 second, just Tom, please, for folks who might not know, what is a CIP?
Capital improvement projects. So that's the nitty gritty of things that municipalities need to do to keep things running and working and build out.
And that's included in every single budget, every single year.
So that's your new schools, your road maintenance, all of that sort of stuff that comes together as major capital improvements.
Thank you. Yellow hand, Werner, please.
Yeah, I would just add that what both Deborah and Tom have just said, I think, is absolutely accurate with regard to, specific short-term projects. I mean, we all know that utilities are not easy to deal with, and there are going to be all kinds of glitches. But I sort of took John's question as to also be the much bigger picture, and I just thought, in terms of the positive side of it, in working on warrant articles at town meeting, one person that Zia has been working closely with is Scott Englander, who has decades of experience in energy fields, and he has said over and over that there are a lot of naysayers who worry about the grid on the grandest scale, but that he's really confident that the biggest problems will be addressed. That there are literally thousands of people working on the problems, the storage and just all the technical things. Again, I don't know anything about it, but hearing him talk about it, he says, the professionals in this area are well aware of what a big project it is to bring the grid to scale over the next years. But and again, that the utilities sometimes are not the most forward thinking, but that it is going to happen, and therefore our role is to make sure that people keep pushing to install electrical charging stations and electric buildings and everything everywhere we can, and let the utilities be the ones to figure out how to provide the power.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. Any other questions, comments, concerned? Natalia, thank you for attending. We'll see you next time.
Just on the grid point, not much to say, but when David Pentalone was co-chairing with me, he pulled me aside when this topic of the grid came up, and he said, yeah, it is an issue, but it's sort of an issue when you get to 30% increase in demand, not 10%, you know, so it's a problem, but this was a decade ago, of course. He didn't think it was an imminent problem, but yeah, and they should be.
And he worked for the utility, right? He was an engineer with.
Yeah, he was an engineer for the utility and a PhD. So he had some insight. He didn't say that out loud. He whispered it to me. But maybe it's not a prominent concern just yet. That may have changed by now. I don't know.
Yep. Further questions, comments, concerns? Okay, let me get to my agenda here. I'm got to scroll down a little bit. We've covered a lot of ideas for today. I think it's fantastic. Our next CAB meeting will be Monday, March 13. The topic is open, but I can tell you the two major proposals that have come my way. One is to look at the question of microgrids. There's a advocacy group in the area that encourages local microgrids, I guess, everywhere. And I'm told they're very good speakers. That's number one. Number two is the possibility with the MBTA Communities Act, which Tom alluded to earlier. Maria Morelli is working on that plan, and that has implications on town development patterns, the issues of vertical cities, the issues of historic preservation of buildings, etc. And then the third possibility is the issue of solar hot water technology, which is a phenomenal technology, but no one, as far as I know, has done anything with it at all in town. I learned about it during an MIT experimental solar house project, and solar hot water is phenomenal and not very expensive. So they do it a lot in sunny countries like Israel, Morocco, etc. That would be Monday, March 13, open for ideas on topics for that meeting. And then Monday, April 10, the April meeting, that will be a town-wide candidate environmental forum. And there are 2 seats open on the select board, and I believe there are 3 candidates for those 2 seats, and people with very differing views. And so I'll be informing. I see we have a candidate who I believe has declared in attendance, and I will be informing those people of that. That's just been arranged with BIG. So, and the possibility of school committee candidates, although I don't know if there's what is happening with that race. So that is Don Weitzman, yellow hand, please.
Sorry, just an afterthought about the reinvigorating the working groups. Has any thought been given to how such groups play out in terms of open meeting laws, and whether they would be town committees or independent committees, what that relationship would be? It all feels very murky to me. And I think that these are really important things to have happen. So anybody have any insight into that?
It's going to depend if you trip the quorum or not, which unlikely to do with this many volunteers. So we're not looking at the narrow end of the spectrum, whether it be select board members, ZAB members. I'm sure we won't have all the ZAB members on one particular committee, just like the other official bodies in town.
Yeah, but the committees themselves, are they town committees? Are they subject to open meeting laws, or are they independent community groups that?
Yeah, I'd at least again, it's a working team, working group, not officially in any capacity. There's no recording in terms of open meeting law. As far as I can recollect, I've done this in the past where that hasn't been the case. It's not an official body.
Well, let me, Tom, some another perspective on it. Carla Benka, who some folks know, she's former vice chair of the advisory committee and town meeting member forever, and is a major part of the historical memory of town. She says that basically basically mainly depends on if there are town employees involved or if it is a formal town committee. ZAB, for example, is a formal town committee, whereas CAB is not. And she says that for anything where you have doubts about the open meeting law, the solution is two-part thing. Number one, simply notice it on the town calendar. And that's number one. And number two, periodically post the minutes of each meeting after each meeting has occurred. So it should not be a major obstacle to things as long as folks, notice on town calendar with 2 days notice and periodic minutes. So I think it is now 6:20 p.m. and does anyone have any final questions, comments, concerns? I think we have quite a lot to think about today. Okay, I'm going to keep this meeting open a few more minutes so I can really look at all the chat, but